Welcome to the Aussie Game podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. They say don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. But I'm not sure many Socceroos fans will be smiling at the moment, as the Socceroos were knocked out of the World Cup in the round of 32 by Egypt. After extra time finished at 1-1, the game went to penalties, but we were always on the back foot after Harry Souttar missed with the first kick of the shootout. So, what do we make of the campaign? Did we underachieve, or is this where we're at? Was it personnel or pragmatism that thwarted our progression? Was it tactics or technique that meant we couldn't tackle Argentina? And what happens next? Is it our formation, or could it be our fortitude that's holding us back? Mopper, we'll do our best to answer all these questions and more tonight in what feels like a very pivotal time for the Socceroos.
Yeah, absolutely. And well said there, Chief. And look, the whole nation was devastated. And it just shows how and what the World Cup is all about and the significance of it, isn't it? How much it means to people. You know, you've got all these people that just love this event, and it's the world's biggest game for a reason, and it's the biggest event every 4 years. And unfortunately, we were on the losing end of what was a fair campaign. I think if you look at our ranking, if we want to look at it that, we're at 28th in the world and we're in the top 32. So you could probably say a pass mark, but there's lots of intrigue in what's happened. A lot of people have put in some very strong feedback and where do we sit now and next? And this is what we'll break down tonight. But I think in all significance, you look at where we're sitting as a country and you look at the third time this has happened, we've lost in the knockout stages. I think, Chief, we're on a parallel to actually back to 2005 and that significant shift that we made in 2005 just to qualify. And now it's a given, or not a given, but like we've qualified 6 tournaments, World Cup tournaments in a row, which everyone's now probably used to. And I think the parallel situation is this is the third time we've been in a knockout situation, 2006, 22 and 26. And now I think the parallel situation is what are we going to do now to make that next step? Because I think that's the next challenge. And how can we break that parallel, how we broke it back in 2005? So lots to talk about tonight. Great questions to the viewers, and can't wait to crack into this series tonight of the Aussie game.
Yeah, Mark Milligan made a really good point around just what you were speaking about there before about, it's fantastic that we are consistently qualifying for these World Cups, but it is about what is next. And it really did feel like, considering that the past 2 times we've gone out to the eventual champions in Italy and then Argentina last World Cup, this really did feel like the best opportunity, with all respect to Egypt, who does have their stars in the squad. But this felt like the best opportunity for us to progress. Well, what would have been to the round of 16, where we've gone before, but the first win in a knockout stage. And I think that's really where some of the disappointment comes from. The fact that we're not facing one of the bigger powerhouses of world football, and then our approach to the game, which we will get through as we go through the episode tonight. Let's start with the starting lineup. It was the exact same starting lineup as we put out against Paraguay. And I think that's probably a good place for us to start in terms of where some of the criticism of Tony Popovic has started. And there are some other things as well that we'll get to. But I think for me, and we spoke about this during the week, mate, our best performances at this World Cup was the first game against Turkey. And that front three really worked in terms of Metcalf, Irankunda, and Toure. And I'm not sure why we saw this lineup again. Not sure why Irankunda is consistently played up top. It just doesn't work. And unless there's something else going on behind the scenes, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, you're right in your comments. Irankunda, when he's isolated, we don't see the best of his impact because he works best either out wide or off the shoulder, which it would have said like you said, in Turkey, sorry. He works off the shoulder of Toure or Yengi, who was brought in to this World Cup squad. It really goes to show the only goals that we scored were against Turkey. Obviously, yes, we got a goal against Egypt, but it was an own goal. And we didn't score against America with this approach. We didn't score against Paraguay with this approach. And really, the own goal against Egypt. And it stops us, I believe, from scoring goals. It's a more defensive press when we attack. And when we isolate the striker up front, even Toure was a sacrificial lamb against America, and it just didn't work. And it just, without that three that has been played the most of in the last 12 months, which is Metcalf, obviously Irukunda was behind Toure. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I know why we haven't scored, because we need a target man in the box. And if you look at New Zealand, I said this last week, and Belgium, they attacked Egypt down that left-hand side of attack because that's where Egypt's vulnerable, and they were vulnerable with balls in the box. But unfortunately, Yangi and Toure are target people with the right combination of Viva Volpato, Metcalf, Wirikunda. We just didn't see it. And I believe that's stopped our ability to really get on the front foot and score goals. And even pressing, Chief, it was just like if you got your striker in your back third on your last in your own half, or like we've seen with Egypt's goal, the 9 is protecting the back post. Is that what we want? The 9 protecting inside far post? Everyone's going, oh, Irukunda should have done that. And I'm thinking, hang on, Irakunda's number 9. You want him to protect the back post? That's just not how it works. And unfortunately, that's going to be harsh learnings. But I thought we would have learned this lesson in the past, but we just clearly didn't click.
Yeah, well said, mate. We got a question here from Jeremy saying, what about possible formations that don't leave out lone striker isolated and give us a chance to put up for goals? And yeah, 100% agree in terms of the opportunity to not make our striker play out on their own. I don't think it necessarily needs a formation change. I don't like this formation, but I think the right striker in this formation could work if we're a bit more progressive. We will talk about some formations a little bit later, but I think that if we had Toure, even Yengi, I mean, maybe Toure's not fit, but he came on and played a good solid amount of minutes, so he couldn't have been that unfit. We could have played him from the start. And again, as we've said this time and time again, it's about giving Egypt something to think about. And I think that combination has been proven time and time again that causes headaches. Toure is dynamic as is Kunda, and Metcalf just balances them out perfectly. He's creative. He covers defensively when he needs to, but yeah, we just didn't. And again, it's like you could have played a combination of Metcalf and Valpardo like we did, and had a Toure or a Yangi up front.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to. I don't know whether we're trying to fit square pegs in round holes just to get certain players on the field, but if everyone else can see it, I just don't see why the coaching staff aren't seeing it.
Mate, what about the chemistry we've seen 12 months ago when New Zealand and Toure and Irukunda were together? Like, we've seen it for the last 12 months, how well connected they were, and with Metcalf as well. And even Volpato would have just added to that. But unfortunately, we just weren't brave enough to put them up there. Yeah, it's like, again, putting a 10 there just to isolate defensive press. And unfortunately, we do play like a 3. Oh, I suppose it's a back 5, isn't it? You don't allow the wing backs that far forward,
It's
do
not
they?
a
But
three. It's
it's
not
not
a
a
three.
3.
Like I
Yeah,
know
so
some people talk about a three. It's not.
yeah. So really it's a 5 it's 5 at the back there. So it really doesn't allow it. And I think Boss going down was huge because we'd already lost Italiano and Miller before the World Cup. And then once we lost Boss, we'd lost pretty much all the ability in wing backs. Azabage plays left back at Melbourne City. And we just didn't have anything to penetrate. And not to say that, Truan is not a good player, but again, I think the formation change should have happened then because, again, we're down to no wing backs, pretty much. No wing backs at all. So why play wing backs if we haven't got any? And playing central defenders in there, hoping they're going to transition like bosses, just asking for miracles, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. All right, let's go to the game itself because we actually started not too bad. We had a couple of sights on goal early. Valpardo with an early shot that hit the crossbar. He found a little bit of bit of space there in the middle and picked up the ball on the half turn and had the shot that hit the crossbar. So that would have been very interesting if that had nestled into the top corner. And then the goal. So 13th minute, Egypt score. Harrington just took a step back, just at the incorrect moment, which meant that they stayed on side, the Egypt attackers. And then, as we said, the scorer not picked up, whether that's Bayic who went inside on the player, or whether that's Toure that didn't, sorry, Iran Kunda that didn't track. But as you said, is that supposed to be his job, or should we be better organised on that second phase of play? What did you make of the goal, mate?
I thought the lead up to the goal was we just went out too slow. I thought, apart from Valpardo's early shot, we retreated, didn't we? I was trying to look for phases of play just before it, like where we had the opportunity to hold the ball, but we just didn't have the ball, and it allowed Egypt into our half again. And I think it's just that mentality thing again of just sitting deep, which causes pressure. It causes the free kick, and again, the free kick. You're telling players like Salah not to deliver a great ball. Like it's just it's very hard to take. But again, like you said, if we would have come out together, we could have probably got them offside. But again, we just never protected that inside the post with the right people. That our central defenders were like stuck on near post and in the middle of the box. It wasn't no one was protecting far post with any height, and we had heaps of height there. So again, I think this is a misread because of that second ball, and disappointing because they had too much time to play the ball in, didn't they? Like again, like they just picked that vision that we allow them too much space and time. That second ball, not enough pressure on the ball, and they just easily just pick out far post and look at the two shortest players of the pitch, and there you go. The result's the result.
A long throws, mate, into the box, probably our most dangerous play during the middle part of that first half. A couple of times we got Harry Suter on the end of him, and balls kind of bounced around. No, Beige had one shot that went on target, but straight to the keeper. But they were probably our best creations of some chances in the middle part of that first half. Our set pieces continued to be underwhelming, unfortunately. End of the first half, Valpardo again found a bit of space, but couldn't get his shot on target. And then Aidan O'Neill delivered a great cross into the box, but unfortunately, it was Iran Kunda who, for his diminutive size, is pretty decent in the air, but didn't really give him much of a chance against some tall Egyptian defenders, and the ball just fell to the keeper. But you could imagine if there was a Toure or a Yengi on the end of that one, on the end of that delivery from Aidan O'Neill.
Oh mate, this is see, it's Valpardo's and these guys' strengths, isn't it? Delivering great balls, and they've done it in the first half, but we just again that lacked that target man, and it was Egypt's weakness, and we didn't exploit it. We weren't brave enough, and I tell you what, even a Yengi, if Toure's not fit, would have been absolutely brilliant in there. And the second ball should be picked up by Irukunda, not again isolated against two massive central defenders. It's just this is the gap, yeah. And unfortunately, with the great delivery that we did have, again, the personnel didn't match up to the style. And that's what I love about Volpardo. His ability to take the game on and put these dangerous balls in or to take those shots would be an absolute asset if it was behind a real number nine. And not to say Hirakunda's not a great player. I just think he's best suited with Valpardo or with Metcalf itself and to exploit these situations. But again, I think Toure or Yangi makes a contest of it, yeah, a more of a contest, and then we pounce. But again, we'll never know, will we? Because we just again, that's the whole going back to that whole system and that really good question by Jeremy.
It's almost like that AFL style, isn't it? Like your big full forward, and if they're not going to take the mark, they're going to bring the ball to ground and let the Rovers
Yeah.
come in and get it. But that's where we could have caused them a bit of chaos. But yeah, not to be. Jody Boss injured on the stroke of half time, so that was obviously massive out for the Socceroos, and I haven't seen any diagnosis of that injury as yet, but fingers crossed for Jody Boss that's not a serious one and he can get back on the field for final as quickly as possible. But what it did mean, as you said before, is that Kai Chuan came in as a like-for-like replacement, see Popovic didn't see that as an opportunity to change things up. A nervy start for Kai Truan where Mamush ran inside him, almost scored about 20 seconds into the second half, but he did settle pretty well after that. He wasn't dynamic going forward necessarily, but did what he needed to do at the back. So yeah, credit to Kai Truan and congrats on making your World Cup debut. It's been a pretty rapid rise for Kai Truan over the past 12 months or so. 55th minute, mate. Australia, this is where we score. So finally, a decent delivery into the box from a set piece, and Egypt scored an own goal due to the pressure of the aerial threats. And if you see on one of the angles of the replay, you see, I think it's Harrington and Suter both jump in front of the Egyptian defender that put it in the back of the net. And no doubt he was pretty unsighted. But again, this is kind of with our set piece delivery has been so poor all tournament. We finally get one right. Doesn't necessarily come off one of our heads, but and results in a goal. But it's about the only one we saw throughout the whole World Cup campaign.
Yeah, I think technically this is a big opportunity, isn't it? And we've got to find that player that can deliver. Look, I think the players, Valpardo's put in a couple of nice balls over the course, but that was with the ball at his feet, not dead ball. We've got to find this. Normally Metcalf puts in a good corner, but again, we haven't really seen it. Or the tactic was pop it up in the air, which doesn't really challenge defenders these days. Needs to be in at pace. But yeah, I guess it's a technical problem of Australia to find that right player, and I think this is where we've got to be a bit more open-minded about how crucial these small moments are, isn't it? Like if we can find a technical player and get him into the system, maybe this is the real blueprint point. I will say though, and congratulations to Truon, but I think a lot of noise is about what happened after Chief. But I think when we lost Boss, we had a moment, and I think this was one of the defining moments. Even though we equalised in the second half, I thought the defining moment was then. If we're ever going to change our formation to challenge Egypt or get on the front foot, it would have been then, knowing that you've never took Miller to the cup, you've lost Italiano, and now you've lost Boss, who was replacement. There was no one there at proper right wing back. This was the chance to go to a back four or change it up a bit, or go and just leave that back three by themselves and just be a little bit more direct, maybe 3-4-2-1, like with a defensive midfield 10 and two centre midfielders or something. I thought that was the defining moment, not what happened after.
Oh, look, mate, even a 4-2-3-1, you still got your solid defense in front of a back four, and it just means pushing someone slightly higher forward. But that could have been Jackson Irvine sitting in that pocket and just being able to put himself about and create something there. But look, it's we've seen the we've seen the opportunities to do it all throughout Popovic's tenure, and it just hasn't happened. So yeah, whether it will happen in the future, we'll discuss that in a sec. I just wanted to point out as well that, and I've seen a few people point this out as well, but after we scored, for the next probably 10 to 15 minutes, Egypt dominated possession, dominated territory, dominated the game, and it's just when you score that goal, that again is another opportunity to go, all right, we're on the front foot now, we've got the momentum, we've got the confidence. Let's go get a second one and try and put this game away and dominate the second half. But Tommy Orr put it really well in the post-game analysis. He said it's a shame that we do go into our shell when we have ascendancy. I hope we can learn the lessons from that. Yeah, look at again, it's that I don't know what is it about it that we can't be proactive and try and go out and win this game instead of thinking, oh well, let's hold on to something and as the game turned out, that's how it played out because the last 10 minutes of regular time and just about all of extra time, Egypt had us under pressure the whole time.
Yeah, look, beautiful words by Tommy Orr. I was really great listening to him in this tournament. He offers such great feedback, doesn't he? And he's really good analytically, and he picked that out absolutely spot on. Yeah, it is a shame, but I thought Egypt, they got the goal and they were a bit play antics, weren't they? They were slowing it down, and even after they scored, and a bit of theatrics with when they go down, and they were even time wasting even after 1-0 so early on, but they got caught out, didn't they? And they conceded and they just went up a gear, didn't they? And unfortunately, if you want ascendancy, you got to go with it or take it past them. And again, we went back to that same first 15 minutes of mentality of just, okay, that's enough. Let's just wait for that moment to happen. But unfortunately, our moments didn't happen. We just didn't have the quality. And Egypt really ramped it up and were unlucky probably not to win it in normal time and extra time. They had chances in both phases of play and the better chances, the better big chances of the game.
Yeah, they definitely did, mate. In the 74th minute, we saw Aiden Rustic come on for Christian Valpardo, and then Mohamed Toure come on for Nestori Irinkunda. We probably got a little bit of ascendancy back with those two substitutions. And then right at the end of normal time, Beach makes an incredible save, reflex save, to keep Australia in the World Cup at that point and to force extra time. So, yeah, he was really a man in form. Start of extra time, we saw A1 Mobile make his first appearance of the World Cup, coming on for Connor Metcalf, and then Paul Okanangler for Aidan O'Neill, who had worked his absolute socks off throughout this tournament, and he had a fantastic campaign. Aidan O'Neill, and or right at the end of extra time, the the kind of the one that's puzzled plenty of Socceroos fans, but we saw Matty Ryan substituted on for Patrick Beach. Obviously Ryan brought in because he's thought to be the better penalty saver of the two. Interesting call, mate. What did you make of it?
Well, it didn't work. It's divided opinion. Look, if you look at it tactically, there's three keepers, right? Who's got the best record of saving penalties? Paul Izzo. He's the one that has the record to save penalties. He's got the best record out of all three of them, by not by a short margin either, by a long way. And that's no disrespect to the other two keepers. Look, unfortunately, it was a tactic he tried to play and it didn't work. And whether Beach should have stayed on would have made the difference, or whether Izzo would have been, we'll never know. The problem is it's probably the way it come about. Like after the interviews, we thought this was a planned tactic, but it wasn't. No one knew about it, and you know, Matty Ryan hasn't seen any football, and then gets told to warm up for in extra time and with Izzo, and that I think that's the bigger problem. And then Beach didn't know nothing about it either. And I'm sure they're all loyal and respectful of each other. Whoever would have gone on, that everyone's behind them. But it ended up being a very poor decision because it backfired, didn't it? If it worked, then it would have been a miracle, and everyone would have sung the praises. But it was shambolic in the end, wasn't it? And unfortunately, if you ask me, my personal opinion, should he made the change? If he was going to be brave enough to make the change, which he was, then the best person for the job was actually Izzo with his record. It's outstanding at penalty saves.
Yeah, it certainly was a bizarre decision. My first thought was, it must have been pre-planned, but then, as you said, when you listen to the post-match interviews of both Patrick Beach and Matty Ryan, so Beach said you have to talk to the coaches about that in terms of the change. I found out at the same time you guys did. Obviously, there was a plan that was put in place, and it wasn't for us to know about. The coach has made a decision, and as far as it goes, Maddie and I are here to do the job of whatever works best for the team and brings the best outcome for our team. And then Ryan also said on the decision, no, I wasn't told before the match. So I agree with you. I think that's the most concerning part. If this was pre-planned the day before, they said, Patrick, you're starting. However, if it goes to penalties and we do have a substitute left, this is what the decision is going to be. Like, if the coaching staff knew that, at least give the heads up. At least give the heads up to Ryan. You might not tell Beach about it to, have him thinking about other things, but at least give Matt Ryan the heads up that that is going to happen so that he's prepared to go in there for a penalty shootout. Who knows how long it was before the substitution was made that Ryan was told, hey, you go, because he would have been sitting there thinking, all right, this is going to the end, and I'm obviously going to be ready if Beach gets injured, but to put yourself into that situation of a shootout is a bit crazy to me.
Yeah, man. Do you think about the mentality of that's the problem, isn't it? It's the mentality, the preparation. At such short notice, it just what I mean. It wouldn't even analytically thought about it. Like, okay, did he even have enough time to analyze if it was going to penalty shootouts where they were going? Like, it's look, we know the result, what happened, it just didn't work. So how it's been done is done, and we paid a huge price for it, haven't we? And unfortunately, the gutsy coming back that 1-1 and holding on and, showing some character again within the game. In the end, the result come to an end. So it was a shame the way it ended, wasn't it? That's just what the hard part is for every Australian to take. And I think too, Chief, when you look at the penalty takers, I know you're going to touch on this point next, is you probably look at Valpardo, Irukunda, Metcalf, O'Neill. They probably all would have probably taken a penalty too. I think all our penalty takers that would have been picked first were all off. And I think this is another hard part. You look at Salah, who hardly trained all week or light training at best, and was injured last week, and he plays 120 minutes, and we just keep pulling players off that. Surely this situation was going to possibility of it arising, and I guarantee you that those four players definitely would have taken a pen.
Well, it's a good point you make because we were constantly told throughout the tournament that we're the fittest, if not one of the fittest teams in the tournament. So you would think that a few of them would be able to run out the whole game, and particularly the way that Egypt finished so dominant over us. But the penalty shootout, yeah, well, Egypt converted all four of theirs. Sutar put his over the bar for the first kick. Irvine converted, Mobile converted, and then 18-year-old Lucas Harrington steps up for the fourth. Not a bad penalty, really, from Harrington. A foot lower, and that just goes in the top corner. But the courage of the kid to step up, in that situation. I've read conflicting reports about how the penalty takers came about. One of them I saw that they're all told their order. There was no real choice in it. They were just told, this is your number, this is when you're going up. So that would have been interesting how that one played out. Harrington, post the penalty shootout, said the coaching staff trusted me. I was confident going into it. I knew where I wanted to put it. Unfortunately, it is just part of football I missed. And then speaking to reporters, also Alessandro Scardi revealed that he was due to take the fifth penalty in the shootout. So three of our centre backs taking the first five penalties is probably an interesting tactic. Yeah, but look credit to Harrington for stepping up there and taking it. Doesn't seem like the type of kid that's going to phase him too much, but you probably would have hoped that some of the more experienced players would have stepped up in that situation.
Yeah, look, I don't know what's happened in preparation for this match and how this situation wasn't discussed as a unit, that we had a better plan, because looks like a shambolic plan and the end result was what we got. So I think, we didn't leave too many stones unturned in this. We had great preparation, we had great setup, did a lot of great things in the last 12 months, but unfortunately, the most crucial part, well, for what we know anyway, so I don't want to speak out of text, but look like that we weren't organised or prepared or really had a clear understanding of what was happening in this penalty shootout, and it's just such a shame. Harrington reminds me of Saka. I remember when Saka, he had that penalty kick for England at such a young age, and Saka's bloomed on from that, and it's really spurred him on confidence-wise. So yeah, let's hope that that type of mentality, experiencing this early, just helps him even grow even more. And yeah, he showed great character, like you said, and hopefully just spurns him on to better things. And like Saka for England, just he steps up, takes it all the time now. So yeah, hopefully that's just a continuation of the young fella, and he shows great resilience, doesn't he, when he owns it like that. And I think this boy is still got a very bright future, and you're going to experience a lot of things in football, aren't you? And this is the top level, and how hard it is, and how small margins are.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And look, even the way he spoke to reporters post match just shows a mature head on some really young shoulders. So I've no doubt that he will go on and do some spectacular things in his career. And hopefully, this is just a small little blip for him. But yeah, again, credit to him stepping up at such a young age in that pressure situation. Let's talk about the campaign as a whole, mate. We've got a great question from Aiden. Is it unfair to say this World Cup campaign was a disappointment?
I don't think so. I think it's where we're at. I think, like I said, we're ranked 28. We're in the top 32. We got out of a good group. Everyone was quite even around where they are in the world, and so was Egypt. They're just above us. So we played all the nations that we're probably at a similar standard. Probably America just a little bit further in front, but I think to get to the 32, to get so close to penalty shootout, like it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it? Penalty shootout, but I look at our side, and you got to look at where they're at, and especially in their development. And you look at Irakunda, played 50 games in the last 12 months at Watford, championship level, moving forward, going to the next step. So I think in time he will develop. I think Touré's the same, moving in the right direction. Metcalf didn't have much football at St. Pauli this year, really impacted, you know, his last 12 months. I think O'Neill's settled in England, in America, sorry, so he's getting game time. Irvine, injury plagued last 12 months, but yeah, come on stronger at St. Pauli at the end. Valpardo hardly plays for Sassuolo, but good unearthed gem, plenty of potential there. But again, needs to find a club. He's got to start, and then I think we can get better. Bayach and Beach both at Melbourne City. Harrington, we've unearthed a star there. Well done. He did well for the under 20s. Gone, he played at Brisbane, gone to America. So I think he's going to kick on. Great to see Suter back. He's only just got back. And he was colossal through the World Cup. So Cardi's probably the one that's there now. Serie A playing every week. He's probably one of few that are at the level, but we need everybody else doing that. And Boss probably is the second one that's probably had Feyenoord, had European football, which was a bonus. Probably he had the most exposure, and you can see the rapid rise of his development because of that European football as well. So, look, I think for where our players are at and the age bracket, we said 2 weeks ago that third or fourth, 3 or 4 times, wasn't it, that we're the youngest side.
Yeah, 3 of the
So
5 youngest, yeah, of the whole,
yeah.
yeah.
So when you look at it realistically from a World Cup player point of view, then that's probably where we are. And you've also got to look at the foundations. And I think this is the big thing if we're ever going to evolve. Every national level from 17s, 20s, 23s, and the seniors play a different style. I think until we go one style across all levels, we will never evolve to that, like that parallel situation that I said. Until we do that and go, this is our system, this is our style of play, then we can probably look at that next step. But unfortunately, you look at Germany, they got knocked out. Netherlands got knocked out. Italy never made it. So look at the bigger picture. Do you really think Australian football, with the A League and all that, has enough behind them and the players developing enough and all young players playing at a high level? We've missed the 17s. We struggled to make the World Cup. 20s, that level's going pretty good at the moment. 23s was a disaster campaign that last when they went overseas. And then we held players back. So we've got a lot of work to do underneath to say that we should be in that last 16 or doing better at knockout stages. There's a lot more than just one game that determines your football country's outcome. And you've seen best practice, and you see how much money that England, France, Spain, all them put into it, but they all play the same system from sixes up. So I think it's a great question, but I think realistically you've got to be fair of where our nation is, and I think we punch above our weight sometimes for what we've got underneath the crust.
Yeah, well, it's well said, mate. For me, I look at it at that campaign as a whole, and all right, we surprised Turkey in the first game. Great start to the campaign. We were 2 negative against USA. Let's see how they progress throughout the tournament. See how far they go, and we'll probably get a bit of a gauge of how hard it was to face them as a team in that kind of single lens of how we look at that. But then also building on top of that, playing the host nation with the raucous crowd behind them and in that intimidating atmosphere and see how that plays out. And then Paraguay, I know that both teams went into that knowing that a draw would be enough, but then they've gone and got a result against Germany. And then this morning they've even, taken France pretty close. They needed a penalty to get through, and very questionable about the way the Paraguay approach these games, but they've taken out a big name, and they've pushed France right to the end, although France dominated the game. So in a group where we didn't have a really dominant team like we've had in the past. I mean, we've had Brazil, we've had France, we've had Germany, we've had Spain before. We didn't have one of those, as you said to me yesterday, mate. We didn't have one of those in the group this year. It was much more even, but we still got out of the group. It could have been a very tricky one. We still got out of there. For me, it's just that we didn't get out of that group phase and play a big top 10 nation. This was an opportunity for us. And for the fact that Salah and Marmoush, they're two big stars, they weren't at their best. This was probably the chance. And if a few little things went our way, I think we could have done it. But yeah, I'm disappointed, but I think I take your point of like that's probably about where we're at. But we could have pushed on a bit further, I thought.
Yeah, I think if we would have been a bit more brave, Aiden, and evolved and been a bit more, you know, that nine up front we talked about with Jordan in the previous one, I think we could have really put them under a lot more pressure. But unfortunately, we've seen it. We had a little bit more possession against Egypt. We had more shots, but again, without that combination, yeah, it just holds us back.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our next question from M Ball. Could a back four work with the current Australian squad? I think absolutely it could. I think a 4-2-3-1 might be a perfect system for where our strengths lie and being able to fit a few more of our best players into a formation.
I'm dying for it, M-Ball. I'm dying for it. Let's see Volpato in the 10, Metcalf, Irukunda left and right, and behind Toure. Yeah, that would be a formation that teams would fear. Can you imagine the football we could play with them four playing and covered by O'Neill or Irvine or O'Neill and Ocon? Let me have it, please, Popper, just once, and it will show itself. But M-Ball, I agree with you. Yes, we can play with a back four.
I think it's the philosophy as much as the formation though as well. As you said before, if it was a back three, who in transition played more like a 3-4-3, that would kind of be okay as well. It's
Yeah,
it's as much this
100%.
formation as it is the philosophy of what we're doing. But yeah, absolutely. I think but to your point before, mate, this is about having consistency all throughout our age groups and having a style. We will there is a good point about that we'll get to as well.
Yeah.
Um these next sort of questions, a lot of it is about the next Socceroos coach. So let me just read through them and then I'll get your opinion on it, mate. So X has said, should the Socceroos aim to attract a coach with international experience, e.g., a South American or European, rather than going into the former Socceroo market? Vince says, should we be grooming Milligan now for 2030 World Cup? Should Mark Popperball says, should Mark Milligan be the next Socceroos coach? And then Australian Football Network says, should Popovic remain in charge for the upcoming Asian Cup campaign, or is it time to look elsewhere? Your thoughts?
You've got to respect his contract, and we've got to respect what Popper's done. He's got us out of a situation, if you go back to the start, wasn't healthy at all, and he's done well. And he's brought a lot of positives as well. I know the style is probably hammering on everyone's mind, and I get it. And I'm one of those people that would love to see us evolve. Is this a timing thing? Will he evolve? I was stoked when Popper was appointed. I thought it was a great appointment. I didn't expect, looking at his previous teams, that we'd be this deep and defensive. Even though he's a defender, I didn't think he'd turn us into this back five system. But you've got to respect what he's done. He has got us through the round of 32. It hasn't been a disaster. So I think he needs to honour his contract and give him the opportunity with this group to go to the Asia Cup. So that's just respect. It's the Australian way anyway to give him that. I know you're frustrated though in the style of play, and so are we. Should Mark Milligan be groomed or be the next Socceroos coach? Look, he has shown in his first year as head coach at Newcastle great potential and looks fantastic. His football style, wow, that would be exciting. And with a group of players like this, yes, it would be exciting. And we should be grooming him because, yes, of course, you've got to think past Popper in 4 to 6 years. And he's got a good mindset, Mark Milligan. But let's see how he goes in Asia. That'll be a real good test for him because again, he's got to elevate his coaching style as well to see if he can compete in Asia, especially with the salary cap and that of the A League. So that'll be his next test. Should the Socceroos attract a coach with international experience? Well, this is what I talked about parallel moment back in 2005. We had to go to that high level. We did everything possible to spend and invest, but I don't think it's just about the coach. I think there's other things in Australian football that we need to get right first before we go down that international coach. I think you could bring in any international coach if you could afford it, for starters, but the same flaws will happen with the same style from youth down and seniors down, sorry, to youth level. And there's still work to do on the A League, and there's still a lot of work to do on Australian football to get the pyramid right. I don't think you go to an international until you got that stuff, wrapped up, and then go for that international, because otherwise you're just going to be like every other country and just get desperate. Just a person that's been there and done that. And yeah, look, Gus, he took us to that next level. But again, as you find out when you get to the World Cup, you face these nations that have just got everything right systematically, and and it's so hard to, if you think Australia should be competing against these top nations, mate, we're way off competing against some of the best. I think we're overachieving sometimes, because the amount of facilities and structures they've got in place, like look at Spain, just they've just got it all from top to bottom, and France top to bottom. That is, you've got to get that stuff right first.
You just made me think about another team that got knocked out at the round of 32 stage, and this is a country that has seemingly got their things together in Japan. And I'm not, they
Yeah.
obviously got knocked out against Brazil, one of the powerhouses, even if they're not as good as they possibly were in the past. But yeah, you got to put some of this stuff in context. I think in terms of that was a team that we thought potentially could go really, really deep in this tournament, and they've been knocked out at the same stage as us.
Yeah. The thing is with Japan, women's and men's, they're winning every age group in Asia, and they're going to the World Cups in every age division, and that's going to help them long term. So, and they're developing a lot of depth in there, aren't they? And they've got a good strategy. And yep, you've got to look at best practice. Best practice in Asia is Japan. Best practice in Europe is probably France and Spain, and even some point England to a point. So you've got to look at these best practices and what you do, but look at the amount of money they're spending, mate. Like, just unbelievable. We've got some of our best people are coaching elsewhere or developing other nations, like Tim Cahill, like we said. Like, you got to get those things right first. And they've just got a great philosophy, Japan, that yeah, would be good to copy it, but again, they have J League 1, J League 2. They have a youth system. They have we spoke about that American that set up all that academy stuff that they've got. Like, they're just big picture, and they're what 20, 30 years or something that they're playing in. So they've still got a long way to go. They know how hard it is to crack this market, but hey, they were brave with the ball against Brazil. They scored early. They were up 1-0. They were missing Kubo, who plays in Spain. He's one of their best players, and they're missing one of their other key players too. I can't remember his name, but so just goes to show they took it right to Brazil, and Brazil only just got them in the end.
Yeah, fair point, mate. All right. Here's a question from Rue. What about shifting the Asian Cup to 2 years after the World Cup? Inexperience in the knockout stages was evident in this World Cup. Give players high intensity, head to head experience with 120 minutes plus penalty kicks closer to the World Cup. So I don't think we'll have much influence in moving the Asian Cup. That's a AFC decision, and I think it's probably sitting in that January period after each of the World Cups. So I don't think we can change that. But I like the points around those kind of experiences. And I think that's one thing that we could probably take from this World Cup campaign in terms of we haven't gone to extra time in a World Cup before, and we haven't gone to penalty kicks before. So take all of that on as a nation and learn from that. And as much as we can sit back and reflect and say, you should have done this in extra time, or the penalty kick should have been done better and all this kind of thing. It's like, okay, like this is how we learn. This is what we do. You saw even the Egypt squad preparing for the penalty shootouts. They're all watching penalty shootouts. Someone even said they were watching Matty Ryan. So they obviously had clips prepared to see how he moves and when he moves, all this kind of stuff. Again, there's all these learning experiences that we could take from this campaign that we can implement going forward.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, mate. Absolutely hit it on the head again. And Rue, good point about the Asia Cup, but unfortunately, Euros is 2 years. They've got Europeans got the calendar for the Euros. You got Copa America in between that. and you got the Africa Cup as well. So Asia Cup just fits in that slot, unfortunately, and that's where Asia is. And FIFA have have these international windows for that, and unfortunately, we're first up. But you know, mightn't be a bad thing. But you're right. We'll get some good exposure in that Asia Cup. Yeah, yeah, it'd be nice to be in the middle, but unfortunately, it's not to be.
In a funny way, like, and we've said this before, like the way that Ange did it, he used the 2014 World
Yeah.
Cup as preparation for the 2015 Asian Cup, which of course they won. So it almost kind of happens in reverse for us, in a sense. So Football Australia received $15.8 million Australian for reaching the round of 32. So that's a good investment into the game. No doubt a portion will go to the players as well for all their efforts too. But the more money coming back into the game, the better. This was something I picked up just this afternoon, mate, but on the Football 360 site. But Heather Garriock, Football Australia's executive director of football, said one thing is missing in Australia, and that's a long-term vision for the game. And that was in response to some of the criticism of the Socceroos approach, mainly from Mark Milligan. From what I saw, it was almost like he was auditioning for the future Socceroos coach job, mate, when he was giving his post-match analysis about where he thought the game was and where they thought it should be. But very interesting from Heather Garriock to say that, to come out and say that. And it seems like a no-brainer, but we just need to get this thing happening because it's been talked about. We've had some false starts, and we just need to get an approach, agree on it at all the levels we need to implement it and start running with it.
Well, I don't know if it's a long-term vision. It's long-term strategy more than a vision. I think everyone knows where the vision is, like, to be the best, like Johnny Warren said, yeah, we can do this, yeah, like, I told you so, yeah, like, I don't think it's a vision. I think it's a strategy. Long-term strategy is what we need, and a short-term strategy because obviously you've got to evolve. But yeah, I think more strategy than vision. But I understand the point though. So yeah, look, but like you said though, with how much talk, so many experts have talked about this, how many times, and Milligan's just backing up what everyone else has said in the past, haven't they? And that they put it to work, put it, like I said, 17s up, or the emerging Matildas up. This is the style, this is the coaching. You fit the coach for the style, and the rest
Yeah.
is history. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep going on the questions. It was a really good point though you brought up.
Maybe like probably getting caught up on it, but maybe the vision strategy, maybe that's a bit interchangeable in what she's saying.
Yeah,
She's probably been
yeah,
put on the spot for that one. But I think the most important thing though is that we need some kind of agreement going forward as to this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, basically.
yeah. I think we've talked way too much over the last 30 years. I just if we haven't learned our lessons, and everyone's saying the same thing, everyone loves the game. Look at how many people are devastated and having so much emotion and feedback on what we did and critiquing. We should have done this and could have done that, and you know what I mean. Everybody's behind the vision. We just got to obviously keep supporting and getting better structures in place to help support the vision. That's what we need. But anyway, that's it's again, it raises the question every World Cup when it finishes, women and men, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, even to your point around, millions of people no doubt tuning in yesterday morning watching the Socceroos, and it's like, well, how do we
Yeah,
get those casual fans more invested in the
yeah,
game generally? Like
absolutely.
that's a strategy in itself. But
Yeah,
yeah, anyway, look, a disappointing end to our campaign. Lots to learn from. Thank you, everyone, for all those amazing questions around the World Cup. That was really, really good to talk through. Bit of therapy, maybe for you and I, Mopper, as we chatted through that one. Let's talk a few overseas transfers. We've seen Clayton Taylor go to Barnsley in League One. That one's been rumoured for a little bit. And we've also seen Eli Adams, his former Newcastle Jets teammate. He's landed in Gamba Osaka in J1. What do you make of those couple of moves, mate?
yeah. Look, I think they're great stepping stones. I think Eli Adams going to the J League's a great move. I think, technically it'll really tidy him up. And I'm looking forward to seeing whether he can stamp his level in Asia. I think it's a good stepping stone for the next step. Clayton Taylor, I think, gets heaps of games over there, League One. Like, probably not the standard, but we've seen a couple of Aussies over there this year that done really well and got some loan moves in League One there. And I think it's good when you get 50 games plus, and if you can start every week, it's good football. Like, it beats what we've got here, doesn't it? When you're only playing 20 or 30 games, so. I think it's a good step, and it's a good window over there, isn't it? In England, you can, lots of clubs around, and everyone's looking at each other. So, yeah, I think it's a good move. Joe Lolly, it's going to be exciting, isn't it? And Nosky Gonzalez to Jets, they've lost some key players, but have brought some key players in, a bit of experience, a bit of youth, so balances it out. They're going to have Europe, Asia. Sorry, I got tied up in Europe. Asia. So that'll be good for Joe Lolly. He'll be great in that tournament. And the girls, great move to Rosengard. Good football team, good competition over there. Next step, it's hell of a lot better than what we've got here in Australia that we can offer them. So I think that's fantastic. And then, yeah, what about Big Ange, Chief? Signs of Al Nassr. Yeah, he's done Asia before, hasn't he, Ange? And I think it'll be a good pickup. Another region of Asia, which will be good, and I think it'll be a nice fit for him.
Yeah, I'll just touch on Briley Henry and Izzy Gomez have left the Briley was at Melbourne City and Izzy Gomez obviously at Central Coast Mariners. They've both landed there at Rosengard. Remy Simpson there already as a Matilda's teammate. So we wish the girls well over in Sweden. We've said this before. Sweden seems to be a good kind of stepping stone to some of those bigger competitions in Europe in particular. Yeah, look, Big Ange, he signed with Al Nassr, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo's club. So we've got a couple of questions on Ange. First one from Steve. Should Ange accept blood money? Will it end his career? And the second one from Ravinga. Is there a world after Saudi that we could get Ange back for the national team? So let's get to those questions in a sec. I think if, for me, I would have hoped that he was going to stay in Europe, but perhaps he just didn't receive the offers that he was hoping for and probably just didn't want to stay out of work for too long, I think. It is interesting. Can't recall any of the coaches that went to Saudi that have been that have gone back to Europe. I know I've seen a few players do that, but hopefully for Ange, this is a bit of a halfway point to hopefully get back into Europe at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I don't think he found the right job offer in the right country or the right league. I think he would have had offers, no doubt, but it is high profile over there in Saudi, and that's, yes, right, because of the money. It's still looked at. So I think he's just trying to he's getting a team that won the championship last year, that won the league. So they're going to be fighting for silverware, and that's what he would have seen. And he would be in Asian Champions League, which is exactly what he'd want to be at if he couldn't get the job over in Europe. So, look, you can understand from a football perspective why he's gone there. Look, there's a lot of been talk about what that competition over there, but you've got to understand there is still some massive players over there, and financially it's very huge. Like, you can't deny that. So whether that's the money that they're talking about or not, it's you got to make a living as a coach, don't you?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting, and obviously an experience for him coaching Cristiano Ronaldo, who's not what he was, but it's something else for Ange on his resume. On the second question, will we see Ange back for the national team? I highly doubt that. I think it would take an absolute miracle to get him back coaching the Socceroos after what he was put through, not just by Football Australia, but the Australian media at the time when he was in charge of the Socceroos. I think that bridge has been burnt. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to see that. I think we'd probably be more likely to see him coaching the Greek national team, to be honest, than the Socceroos.
Yeah, no, I can't see it either. I just think it's not on his platform anymore, and he's done it, and he never goes back. Isn't that what he said? Never goes back. So that pretty much sums up that answer with Ange, unless he surprises. It'd be great to see him later on in life, though, developing somewhere along the football platform, because these are the people that I talk about later on for our vision or our strategy, which would be great for Australian football.
Yeah, well said, mate. Also, some other news from an Australian moving to Saudi. Arthur Papas has gone to Al Ettifaq in the Saudi Pro League as well. So, good progression for Arthur Papas in his career. He was in the J League last season and has moved over to Saudi. So, yeah, we wish Arthur all the best. A lot of our Australian coaches are making moves about the place. So, yeah, we wish them all the best in their future.
Yep, absolutely. Arthur was in the J League last year, so yeah, he's getting some exposure over there as well. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes with his new side.
Yeah, definitely, mate. All right, mate. That's probably gonna do us for tonight. Thank you everyone for sending in your questions. They were really great to go through. Mopper, this is our 99th episode, which means obviously that next weekend is going to be our 100th episode. So we're very keen to do another fan week, which we did a couple of months back, where we can get some questions from our listeners and our social media followers as well on any topics you want to discuss. We'll put out a few prompts on social media during the week, but if you want to drop comments into the podcast episode, feel free to. But we just want to discuss what you want to hear about. Maybe it's topics that don't normally get discussed on other podcast platforms. We're happy to look into, do a bit of research, and yeah, just chat about things that interest you in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love the questions that keep coming through. They really, make us think hard about what's on your mind. And look, Socceroos fans, too, lift your heads, dust yourselves off. The potential's there in this group, and a lot of exciting moves hopefully coming up for a few of them. Hopefully, this is just the evolution, and we'll just, unfortunately, in life, you have to learn hard lessons to improve and get better. So I know it's tough. We want to be part of that journey, but unfortunately, it is over. But again, I think there's enough there, Chief, to be excited about on what chapter is next with this Socceroo side.
Oh, no doubt the ceiling for this group is in 4 years or 8 years' time. So we'll definitely be ahead of schedule for this World Cup, but let's hope that that path continues on and we can get the most out of this group. All right, Mopper, thanks for your time tonight. Looking forward to recording our 100th episode next week. But thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back on Sunday. Enjoy your football.
All the best, everyone.